Friends that made quite an impact on my life and perhaps shaping of my yeah, personality or likes, dislikes. Be they good or bad, they did have an influence on me. One of them was Roy Wallace, and he apparently started Liberty schools when he was, I would imagine, in third, fourth grade. I can remember him, and they lived about 3/4 of a mile north of us on a small little, we call it a farm, but it was probably 5-acre parcel. And he and his parents had 2 horses for him and his sister. She never rode, that I can recall. He had a new bicycle at Christmas time, brand new bicycle with big balloon tires and all the nice things on it. Big, nice handlebars that were generous and had, it was so nice. I never had anything like it. I yearned for a bike like that. The following Christmas, height of the Depression, my father managed a bicycle for my sister and I, and they were used bikes that had been repainted, and in Kansas City, and I think they probably at that time cost somewhere around $5 a piece, and it was all Dad could afford. But I guess it was all I could do to fight the tears off, to realize that it wasn't a brand new bike. I knew it was a reclaimed bike, but it didn't stack up very well. It never looked as nice as those big balloon-tired bikes. But Roy Wallace was my friend then, so we rode bicycle, we rode the horses. His parents took me on down with them on a vacation down in southern Missouri, to Knoll, Missouri. We enjoyed that. Very memorable times, fishing, swimming in the river, Elk River down there. And he continued to be a friend of mine throughout high school. Another friend being George Sadler, and George Sadler was the son of the minister there at home. He lived about 4 or 5 doors from us around the corner. His folks had been missionaries in Africa, in Nigeria, and the house was heavily outfitted with African furniture, what I would refer to now as missionary furniture, but they had lots of artifacts from Africa, and George Sadler and I enjoyed a shop in his basement, and it was there I first had an opportunity to really learn a wood lathe. So he had a wood lathe, and we would turn jobs on it. Enjoyed the wood lathe. Jigsaw. I developed some of my interest in contracted apparently rheumatoid arthritis when he was in Africa, and he had heart problems. So his father used to have to come and pick him up at school. He couldn't walk back and forth to school. He always was taken by my father in the relatively new car, which again my father didn't have, but the minister of the church, of course, had a new car. This always impressed me. Some of my peers and their parents' wealth, and it seemed that we didn't have much. But George ended up graduating there from Liberty High, and I had an opportunity to see him during the war. He had surprised me to me, but I did, over a period of time, find out where George was based. And I went up to George's base, a bomb B-24 group up north of us, and we got together, had a real nice time there at the base, and it became lunchtime. And he said, well, about time we go to the mess hall. And I said, where's the enlisted men's mess? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I thought, you know, I'd go to the enlisted men's mess. I can't go to the officers' mess. He looked around to his buddies. He said, hey, who's got an A2 jacket? So one of his friends threw me this jacket with the lieutenant's bars on the shoulder. Says, put it on, you're going to lunch with us. This is known as impersonating an officer, and this really petrified me. So I went in with them to a mess hall, and it was a very, very nervous meal, because other people seated at the base would say, are you new in the outfit? And I was kind of trying to mumble in my food. No, I'm out based on down the road. And I wanted to carry on as little conversation as I could. They wanted to know what kind of base it was, and I told them it was a fighter. Oh, you're a fighter pilot? No, not really, you know, I based there, but, and I didn't know what to do. Finally the meal ended, and I was greatly relieved to get out of the officers' club without having been discovered and court-martialed. So on leaving George that day, we agreed to get together in another 2 or 3 weeks, and I told him I'd write him a letter and we'd suggest a time to get together. I wrote him a letter. The letter came back a few days later, missing in action. And his mother was frantic, of course. She'd heard nothing except the telegram from the War Department advising her son was missing in action. So my folks wanted me to go up there and find out about it. So I went back up to the base, and it was in September of '44. I met his crew, some of the crew that was in the same outfit, not his. He said, Moon, we don't know what happened to Sadler. He said, we were going in to kick out supplies to the paratroopers over Holland. And he said, we were at about 800 or 900 feet. It was supposed to have been a milk run. And he said George was supervising unloading of the supplies to the paratroopers. And he said we ran into an awful lot of small arms fire. And he said their plane was hit, and they had no opportunity to do anything except go in with the plane. There wasn't enough altitude to parachute out. So they went on and rode the B-24 into the ground. He said, we didn't actually see it hit the ground. We know it must have, but we don't know what happened. We don't know anything about it other than that. We were so busy just watching our own ass that we never really were able to tell. So I had to write back and through censors and try to mealy mouth the words of encouragement to her, and yet not leave her overly encouraged, and yet get it by the censors. And it was a very, very challenging bit of composition that I had to do for his mother. And I found out later that he was a prisoner of war. I never had a chance to see him after that time. I had talked to him once on the phone, perhaps during the 1960s, but I don't know what's happened to him. And last I heard, he was a lawyer in Richmond, Virginia. But that was one of my closest friends, he and Roy Wallace.